This is part 2 of the Drill Press Vise General Information video series. If you haven't seen part 1, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we're going to continue to go over the drill press vices that I use, their pros and cons, and show you some other options that are available out there. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. This is the Palmgren 4-inch ground drill press vise. It's 4 inches across the jaws. And as we open the vise up, we'll show you some of the features about it. First off, there are V channels cut in the static jaw, and the dynamic jaw is flat. The lead screw is an Acme thread, and I actually had to fabricate this lead screw because the original one was pretty bad. But one of the cool things about Palmgren vices, or at least some of their vices, is the end of the lead screw is designed so that you can go ahead and use a wrench on it to really tighten it down. So the front side of this vise is ground flat, the sides of this vise are ground flat, and the top is ground flat. And that's so you can lay this vise on any one of these sides with work held in it and then clamp it down. And the top is ground flush so that you can use whatever kind of clamps you want on the top. So this vise came with a bar that goes into those notches on the bottom. And then you have these T-nuts and these long screws that protrude through the bottom from the top. And they're all recessed, so it doesn't affect the function of the vise itself. But this is so you can lock this vise inside a T-channel on a production drill press table, or on a milling machine, or on a lathe. But I prefer to use it without that bar on there. And it's unclear if this was something that the previous owner had modified the vise with, because I haven't been able to find an example of that T-nut mounting system in any of the Palmgren catalogs. So these Palmgren ground vices are pretty pricey, and they are made of cast iron. I would say they are a step above the angle vise, only that they don't have any mounting points on the vise with the exception of that bar on the bottom. So you would have to clamp the vise to the drill press using C-clamps or bar clamps or quick clamps. But other than that, it's basically the same thing as the very first drill press vise I showed you. You've got a static jaw and then a dynamic jaw. This is a heavy vise. It weighs about 19 pounds, and the modern day version of this vise sells for $313 from Palmgren. So this next vise is the Palmgren Camlock 3-inch, and this is basically a copy of the Gripmaster drill press vise by Heinrich, and these sell, the Heinrich versions, for a lot of money on eBay, and they still are being sold today on Pen Tool. But the cool thing about this vise is it's also called a quick vise. Basically, you can just use that bar to open and close the dynamic jaw. There's a shelf in there for work to rest on. And then you lock the cam. So there's no lead screw to turn. And this system is called a cam lock system. And it's used in a lot of different vices from a lot of different manufacturers. There are 4 mounting points, and in the end, this is still just only as good as the basic drill press vise, in my opinion. So up to this point, all the vices that I've shown you so far, with the exception of the Palmgren ground vise, require you to mount the vise to the table and then move it if you're going to do holes, multiple holes that are not on a parallel line. The next few vices I'm going to show you fix that problem. So the first is this cross slide vise from Shars, and lots of companies make them. They vary in price. This one was around $100. I like Shars. They're still made in China, but it's decent quality stuff. So this is the 4-inch version. They have a 4 and a 6-inch, and I think a 3-inch as well. They've got mounting points on the bottom, and you basically can traverse the top vise, which is basically the same thing as a basic drill press vise, along 2 axes. So the static jaw has V channels cut into it. The dynamic jaw is flush. Again, it's a little over 4 inches, maybe 4 3/16, but it's sold as a 4-inch cross slide. So obviously, since there's so much stuff going on with this vise, you've got to be careful not to over penetrate your work and drill into what's under the work. But once you've got your work clamped inside the vise, then you can drive using the 2 turrets the work on 2 different axes, an X and a Y axis. And this means that if you clamp this thing down, you can move the top vise around to get it to line up with the drill bit. So on my commercial Craftsman Gen 4 Emerson drill press, I have a production table that has T-slots cut into it, and I use the T-nuts on bolts to bolt this thing down. So I wish it was a little wider so that I could have it centered perfectly, but working with it at an angle is not a problem, really. It's still very usable. So once we line it up with those 2 channels, we go ahead and tighten it down. And we're kind of just centering the bottom section of the vise on the chuck, and that gives us our widest range of movement. Now we can put a drill bit inside the chuck. Then we can open up the vise and put our work inside the vise. And I'm going to go ahead and mark where we want to drill. We'll just center that in the vise. And once we've got it locked down, then we can drive. Let's go ahead and lower that drill bit a little. And then we can drive the cross slide so that the bit and the point we want to drill are lined up. And then we can drill it. So this is a great option, in my opinion. If you've got $100 to spend on a vise, this is what I would go with. They sell them at Harbor Freight for $100. Like I said, this is Shars, and you can get it off of Amazon for $100. They're worth every penny, in my opinion. So now if we want to drill a hole there, all we've got to do is drive the turrets. Maybe I should have filmed this from the other side. Yeah, you get the idea. Square it away. So the next vise we're going to talk about is the float lock vise. These were originally branded as Wallstrom float lock vises and float lock safety vises, and eventually AMF bought Wallstrom. Then someone else bought them and started calling them Wallstrom again. I think this one is an AMF, and this is a 15/8. So 15 is the length of that bar, and 8 is the maximum opening width of the vise itself. So it's one of the weird vices that don't measure the width of the jaws to tell you the size of the vise. But these are expensive. And so the static jaw, again, has V grooves cut into it. And the dynamic jaw is supposed to be flush, but I bought this one used, and whoever had it before me really messed up that other jaw. And you can replace those jaws. I just haven't gotten around to it. So the workable area of that jaw inside the bar is about 3.5 inches, and then on top would be 5 inches, because you've got a step there that you could place work in. And the cool thing about this vise is not so much the jaws and everything I'm showing you right now. The cool thing about this vise is really the mounting point and how it mounts. So I'm just demonstrating the V channel here for you. So this is a massive shift from the vises we've looked at up to this point. Not because of this section, although this part is really cool. So it's designed where you can use it this way and drill straight down in, or on either one of the sides, because all of them are ground flush. And then you'll have a clamp down at the other end of the bar. So let's talk about using this thing. So we want to drill a hole here. So we're just going to put the work on that step and tighten it down. And the big thing here is just to make sure wherever you're drilling, it's not directly over the bar. And the reason why it's called a safety vise is because, see how it moves right now? When you lock the clamp down, which is the area I'm about to put a highlight on, back there, it holds the vise to the table. In other words, the vise won't raise up and it won't move. And it's just a brilliant design. So we line up the bit with where we want to drill. Hold the vise in place and then tighten it down. And now it's not going anywhere, and we can drill it. So if we want to drill a second hole, all we've got to do is undo the clamp and move the vise to where we need to drill the second hole. We never have to remove the work or anything like that. and then tighten the clamp back down. It's crazy efficient and very safe. So Mr. Pete has a whole series on building your own version of this float lock vise, but if you don't want to do that, you can still buy these things. They're expensive, somewhere in the $300+ range. And unless you want to drill a hole in your drill press table, you're going to need to buy that corner clamp, the yellow part there, separately, and that's like 80 or 90 bucks. So Pen Tool is the company that sells these things still, and you're going to want the M18915-8, and it sells for $349.95, and you'll need to buy that clamp, the corner clamp, the $89.95. So they make a quick version of this vise, and it sells for $2.99, but that's a little smaller of a vise. And then Heinrich actually makes a version of this utilizing their cam lock system, but it's very pricey, $534. All these are available through Pen Tool. And I'll show you a picture of the Heinrich here in a second. So the next thing I'm going to show you is, if you've got the time and the energy, Palmgren has a YouTube video where he's come up with a similar system to the float lock, except for just basic drill press vises. So he makes a collar that goes on the column and locks down in place, and then he's got a bar mounted to the vise, and it lets him position that vise anywhere and lock it down. So check out that video. And another video, or another company called MagSwitch, makes this magnetic mount, which I think is very cool. And you basically bolt your basic drill press vise to that magnetic mount, lock your work in it, line it up, and then switch the magnets on. These are switchable magnets. And then you can utilize it just like you would any other or bolted down drill press vise. So that mount, that MagSwitch mount, is $399, which is pretty pricey. But it has a breakaway force of 716.39 pounds. So it's not going to come flying off of there. So another option that I'm thinking about trying is this Magnet Pro multi-purpose switch for $59.99 from Amazon. And basically, when you switch this magnet on, it has a holding force of 660 pounds, I believe. And it is an interesting option, in my opinion. So that's going to wrap up this series, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Please, please, please use a drill press vise so that you don't lose digits or get injured or get your belly gashed open, anything crazy like that. As always, I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time.